All right, everybody, ding, ding, ding. That's what I'm talking about. This is Ringside Presents Corner Confessions, and as always, I am Troy Vaughn, also known as Trey Amazing, your favorite part-time stripper, part-time megachurch pastor, but full-time dating commentator. Gia, we are back at it again, and we are up in this with Marla Stewart. And if you don't know who Marla Stewart is, you haven't been paying attention to my channel, and you must be living under a sexually repressed rock here in Atlanta, okay? She is the co-founder of the notorious, infamous Sex Down South Conference, and I've had the pleasure of attending a couple times, and I'm telling you, it is an amazing event, very colorful. You meet some awesome people, both from Atlanta and nearby cities and countries. So again, before we kick things off, Marla, can you give people a brief introduction of who you are and what the Sex Down South Conference is? And we're going to kick right into today's awesome topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I am Marla. I am a sexologist and sexual strategist at Velvet Lips, which is my company that helps people around workshops, coaching, all sorts of things, particularly around seduction, communication, and sex skills. And then I'm also one of the co-founders of the Sex Down South Conference, which is an amazing conference, 3 days of learning and having fun and really connecting to other sex-positive people. So it is quite amazing, I must say so myself.
And how long has the conference been going on now?
So we are going into our 8th year, and this year's theme is a healing and restoration. So, you know, coming out of the pandemic and really trying to understand our own healing just from pandemic, from, you know, the murders of Black men and women. So really just trying to restore our energy and our movement in the sexual liberation movement.
All right, all about restoration and renovation. I like it. So we're here today because we want to talk about a taboo topic that, you know, is beginning to edge its way into mainstream. Not quite there yet, but I'm loving the progress and I'm loving the trajectory of it. I want to talk about Black dungeon culture, and I want to be specific as far as Black dungeon culture because, again, as you know, the topic, you know, dungeon culture. I mean, unless I have it wrong, falls under the umbrella of kink and fetish, correct?
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of like, so kink is like the umbrella, right? And then there's like BDSM, which is a part of kink. And then dungeons are typically the places where people go and do that kink or BDSM. So yeah, it's just sort of like the place where we all gather, the place where we can go where there's equipment and things that we can use to create a scene.
Good. Okay. And so historically, you know, you hear this. I mean, you have a lot of, you know, Black people who are ultra conservative, even when it comes to sex. You know, we can say conservative or just, you know, let's just be real. Some people are narrow-minded or just very sheltered, whatever the case may be. So when you talk about things like BDSM and dungeon or kink and things like that, you're going to have a lot of Black people, particularly here in Atlanta, Georgia, where we're in the Bible Belt. You have a lot of people that label as white people shit. You know, you hear that over and over again, you know, because a lot of Black people feel like there's certain sexual behaviors and certain interests that really historically Black people just don't do. That's what white people do. White people engage in the dungeon shit or the leather stuff or getting tied up or the 50 Shades of whatever. That's, you see white people doing that. Black people, we don't get down like that, which, you know, even over the years I've realized that's complete bullshit. And I do have to thank, you know, the Sex Down South Conference and, you know, professionals like you for putting it out there like, no, there is a growing culture of Black people who are into this stuff. So we can't call it white people shit anymore because there is certainly a very vibrant culture of black people who are thriving and who are doing some amazing things. So briefly, before we start talking about, can you talk about, what's up with this white people shit versus black people shit? They gotta know black people, we're into this stuff too. So where do you think that comes from?
Well, I think when there's something that is taboo, it's associated with taboo, it's associated, some black folks associate it with, slavery. I think part of that is like, oh, wait, we shouldn't be able to, like, we should not even been thinking about getting hit or hitting someone or something along those lines. So I think that's kind of where some of that talk comes from. But honestly, it's changed here a lot, and I would have to say, even though it was very inaccurate, Candy Burris, right, the Real Housewife, she really, when she created this space with the dungeon tour, right, because she had her dungeon, which she didn't, it was like the Moulin Rouge room, but whatever, like she introduced that to a lot of black people. And so thinking about the fetish wear. So black folks have been doing fetish wear for a long time. Think about Janet Jackson, Discipline, Velvet Rope, Rihanna, S&M, so black people have been warming up. And even back, oh my gosh, like in the 90s, I remember Holly Berry did this photo shoot with like all kink and leather gear, what I mean? So, or even thinking about Catwoman, so
beautiful.
Really, we've seen black people in kink gear, and I think when Candy did that dungeon tour, I really opened up people's minds and hearts to being like, oh, this is actually something kind of sexy. This is something that, it can be fun, and it could, help spice up my sex life. It can help me to heal. Like, kink can be used for all sorts of things. And so, it was funny because that year, King Noir, Jet Setting Jasmine, and I did a dungeon tour across the country with different dungeons, LA, Portland, of course here in Atlanta. And it was really exciting because, here's the thing. People thought we were copying Candy, right? Because they thought, oh, you're just copying Candy's stuff and Candy's dungeon tour. And I'm like, Candy's dungeon tour is nothing but was oral sex demos and people singing. That is not a dungeon, and that is nothing to do with dungeons, right?
Actually, when I think about it, I remember hearing about Candy doing it, and I'm thinking to myself, Candy late. Candy, I'm like, cause, big shout out to Candy Burris. I'm not taking anything away from her talent and her keen business savvy, because she's uber
business
successful.
Savvy, yeah.
She's uber successful. But when it comes to this, I'm thinking she ain't talking about anything brand new.
Right.
She's actually on the tail end of the way. I'm like, she actually kind of late.
Right. She is.
Black people been here.
Exactly.
But because of her success as a Real Housewife and
she has that mass audience. You know?
She already has a major platform. So her talking about it gives a lot of people the impression, oh, Candy must be this innovator, and no, she is not. She's just she's brought this topic on this big level, but she is in no way, shape, form, or fashion an innovator or bringing something like this to the masses. I'm like, she's one of the bigger names, particularly out there on reality TV. One of the bigger names just talking about it, but it's been here.
Right.
Dungeon culture specifically has been around, and black people have been in it. They've been doing some great things. And so, and that's the reason why I wanted to kind of elaborate, because we are in Atlanta, Georgia. We are in the Bible Belt. Bible Belt. This is Atlanta, where every corner there's either a strip club or like a church. Me, I'm a stripping pastor anyway, so I'm in both fields. So I understand, but when you talk about being in a quote unquote dungeon, so Sex Down South has its own dungeon, and remind the audience and subscribers, what is the Sex Down South dungeon called?
So we call it the Labyrinth, right? Ooh. So it's sort of like you thinking about a place or a maze. You can go from, one, dungeon toy to the next. And, we pride ourselves because like, this is like a BIPOC dungeon. This is a Black dungeon. This is like, we have folks who are skilled, who we have professional, dominance, professional subs to help people. We have, of course, our dungeon monitors. And, we're super proud of the dungeon. And even though it's only at Sex Down South, we hope that we can one day, of course, acquire a warehouse space where we would actually have this equipment for Black folks and all folks to, come and explore and use the equipment. So, we only have one major dungeon here in Atlanta. Well, kind of like 1.5. Well, one public dungeon, let me say this, one public dungeon and probably many private dungeons or one private dungeon. So it really is important for us that we get that space or find a space and to have that. But the Labyrinth is beautiful. We have a couple of St. Andrew's crosses, or the X's. We have a couple of spanking benches.
I didn't know that's what it was called.
Yeah.
The St. Andrew's crosses. Okay. I've been seeing that. I just called it a cross or an X or. But now I know. See, that's why. See, y'all don't realize that's why I love doing the show, because I learn a lot. Each and every video I do, I walk away learning things I'm like, I had no idea. Because fact of the matter is, when it comes to this culture, I've interviewed you before. I've interviewed Lady D. I've interviewed King Hef and Gigi Robinson, of course, the infamous the Queen Casey Carter, who just recently celebrated a birthday. Happy birthday, Casey. Every time when I interview, I walk away like I did not know that. Because I know for me, I've been guilty of having certain generalizations and stereotypes and all around misinformation. And so when I have an opportunity to interview you guys who've been doing this for a long time, I'm like, you know what, I didn't realize that. Didn't realize, okay, I was kind of ignorant before, because I did have a certain stereotype, and I'm like, you know what, that's not the case. So from what you've seen before with a dungeon, because automatically when you think about dungeon, you think about someplace, a lot of people may think a dungeon, you think about someplace, involving torture, or someplace that's grim and dark and gross and someplace that's unpleasant. But in the realm of kink, that's not necessarily the case. So what can someone who may be brand new, green, straight up neophyte, when it comes to dungeon culture, what can they expect? Because I've actually I've been to the Sex Down South Company, I've actually walked into the Labyrinth, I've actually explored it and seen it firsthand. But for someone who may be new to dungeon culture, or just new to Sex Down South overall, how could you prepare them for their entrance into the Labyrinth?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's sort of like we have a set of rules, like any dungeon. And, we have our guiding principles and our set of rules that say, hey, this is what's allowed, this is what's not allowed, this is what we go by, this is our culture, kind of in this dungeon. So it's really important to read up on those and remember all of those different rules, because as much as we try to take care of you, we also want you to take care of the space too. We want you to have a good time. So any kind of violation to these rules will, get you kicked out. Being interrupting scenes, or just doing things that you're really not supposed to. I always say, take a Kink 101 class. Like, if you haven't been to a dungeon before, just take a Kink 101 class. Like, I have a all about kink, a basic kink class. There's lots of sex ed educators that have like a basic kink class, and really talk about like negotiating, scene setting. Like, what do you want? What are your desires? Maybe you just want to go and watch, you know what I mean? And that's okay, because that's when you see like, oh, I can experience this. This is something new. Or, oh, wow, somebody is getting some real pleasure out of that. I wonder what that feels like. All of these things can be explored in kink without any shame, without any judgment, without the stigma attached. And so it's just a matter of being able to sexually liberate yourself from any kind of bad influence or any kind of, if somebody said to you, that's white people shit or whatever, let it go, because you will have a good time. You will be able to explore, like, hey, I actually maybe like this, or I don't like this. There's so many different kinds of kinks that, you can explore the realm and it could feel really good to you, So it could be spanking, or it could be tied up, it could be wax play, it could be, it could be slapping, it could be a number of things, getting flogged.
All good shit.
Yeah, all the things. But really just understanding the basics of kink. Like I said, negotiating the scene setting, understanding your boundaries, desires, needs, wants, all of those things, and understanding what you might need afterwards, like aftercare, right? You're going to need a glass of wine, or maybe you're going to need a hug, whatever the case may be. Maybe you just need to talk about the situation because you need to process what happened. Maybe you cried during the scene because you had some internal emotions that came out, or something like freed you on the inside. So there's so many things that
very liberating.
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
You may need a cigar, you may need some weed. A lot of things, cigar, weed, hell, you may need some Waffle House. That's okay too. It's all good too. So, because I had an opportunity a couple of years ago, me and one of my ringside admins, Kimberly Grimes, we had an opportunity to walk around and explore, and we saw things like, we saw chains, and we saw, different variations of paddles and whips. We saw a small little, I don't know if you call it a cage or
a cage.
Like, it's like a human-sized
cage.
We saw, I saw something that on the outside looked like a picnic table. But I'm like, I don't know if that would be exact. I'm like, it looked like something you'd been somebody over, or
the spanking bench, the little A bench.
I was like, you know what? And the more I looked at it, I'm like, this is actually very practical. This is something anybody can bring in their bedroom. Like, this could be. I was like, this could work wonders. The more I looked at it, I was like, I'm having some ideas. I'm getting it. And so, but again, I think that for this video, I think the dungeon piece is very, very important, because again, you're going to have people who are going to be maybe intimidated by that word dungeon, or they hear that word and all sorts of imagery comes up, but really in actuality, the reality is it can be extremely beneficial to any relationship, a brand new relationship or 20 years in relationship, doesn't matter, heterosexual or LGBTQIA plus, or whatever the case may be. It doesn't have to be traditional monogamous, it could be non-monogamous, it could be poly, whatever the case may be, but it's so much application that I've seen. I'm like, more people need to know about this, and I think more people I think it needs to be destigmatized, particularly among black people, because this is not white people shit. Black people benefit from this. And so what do you think, well, first and foremost, have you seen both good, positive, or indifferent imagery of dungeon in, like, let's say mainstream media, like movies or music? Do you think, have you witnessed imagery or scenes that you feel like, this bodes well for the culture, or this, not a good, look for our culture at all?
Oh, I think it's great. So Bonding on Netflix season 2 has a black dominant mistress, and she trains like other dominants. And I was like, oh my God, Jet Setting Jasmine was on there. And but they had folks who consulted, and they did represent BDSM, and amongst black folks, amongst dominants, I would say pretty accurately. So I think that helps, right, especially with the imagery in the media, so people can see like, oh hey, black people are doing this thing, and it's amazing. Here in Atlanta, I mean, come on, we have so many different black kink groups. So, you can go to a munch, which is like a casual lunch gathering.
Oh, what's called munch?
Munch, yeah. Ooh. So you can go like a Black Atlanta munch, right, bam? Or you could go to the different, groups on FetLife that are like, hey, we're meeting up, we're all Black folks, and we're kinky. And you can go and talk to them and do that kind of thing. So if people were interested, they could also go that route. They don't necessarily have to take a class, but going to a munch, really getting to know other Black kinksters is super helpful just to find some community, and then see what kink maybe has to offer, or what they've learned, or why they continue to, be a kinkster.
A kinkster, I like that. Because that's a couple years ago when I was at the conference, I was talking with a gentleman who he was part of a leather community, or something like, and I hate that I can't. This may have been 2 years ago, something like that. But he was telling me, like, no, we are a growing community.
It's huge.
It's huge, and I walked away and I gleaned, I'm like, well, all of this is a growing community. I mean, it's not tucked away somewhere and they can only come out at night, and I'm like, no, this is. The same people you see here, these are the people that are sitting next to you in the church pews. They're sitting, their cubicles next to yours, or you're talking to them at the water cooler. Don't even realize that these aren't, skeezy people. These are the people living next door.
Absolutely.
And I think that, again, I do like the fact that more awareness and more attention is being brought to it, and champions like yourself who have the Sex Down South Conference, who are destigmatizing and letting people know, like, look, no, these aren't villains. These are everyday people. Okay, and I do feel like, as a dating commentator myself, I feel like, look, this is Atlanta, this is Georgia, we're in the Bible Belt. Look, let's take that Bible Belt and let's do something with it. Let's flog somebody with it. Let's take some, we gotta get some pleasure out of this, because you do have people that feel like there is only one way, one conservative, missionary, lights on, looking right now. I'm like, come on, y'all. There's so much more to that. But I'm going to always be a supporter and a champion of Sex Down South and the Dungeon culture. And speaking of Sex Down South, we do have one coming up, do we not?
Absolutely, yes. September 8th through the 10th, we will be here in Atlanta, the Sheraton, downtown, and we will have, of course, lots of learning, lots of entertainment, lots of fun, and lots of people who are, down for the cause, and we'll be hanging out in the dungeon. So
nice. And the dungeon is called
the Labyrinth.
Yes, I am digging it. So really quickly, everybody out there, if you're watching, make sure you hit that like button. There's a bell. Make sure you follow us, get the notifications whenever we drop new content, and make sure, most importantly, you subscribe. And while you're at it, while you subscribe and follow, drop some comments down below. Let us know how you feel. And if you're on Facebook, make sure you go to the search bar up top, or wherever it is, it's up top. I don't know how meta it is now, but make sure you find Ringside LLC, the private Facebook group, and request to join, and either myself or one of the admins will admit you. Marla, before we cut out of here, because I know you're busy, anybody that wants to follow you or follow Sex Down South, how can they do that? Are you on social media? Are you on TikTok? Are you on Patreon? Are you on OnlyFans? If you want to follow Marla and Sex Down South, let us know how we can do so.
Yes. Well, if you want to personally follow me, my all my handles, social media handles, are one Marla Stewart. And for Sex Down South, Facebook and Twitter is Sex Down South ATL, and then on Instagram we are SDSCON. So make sure you check us out, and follow us, sign up for our email list so you get the latest updates. Our hotel is going fast, and make sure you get your tickets, because we raise the price eventually. So make sure you make that happen.
Do it now, everybody. And everybody, make sure, just check out the description. We will have those links in the description. So all you got to do is click on it, get your tickets now, book your hotel now. And again, I have been to the Sex Down South Conference. It is an awesome event. Great place to network, great place to just meet cool and awesome new people. I promise you, you will walk out of there a better person, more sexually enlightened, and just overall you're going to have an awesome day in general. I mean, the entire weekend. So everybody, thank you so much. Marla, once again, it's always been a pleasure.
Yes,
Everybody out there, make sure you continue to subscribe to this channel, drop some comments, follow us, and until next time, we will see you again. Adios.